Welcome to Kubernetes SIG Cloud Provider for Wednesday, March 27th, 2024, a date that absolutely exists and is real. Here we are. It's post-KubeCon. We've got some stuff to talk about. Let's get into it. I'm going to drop a doc in the chat and feel free to add your names. And it looks like we have a bot. Do we want to kick the bot? All right, already done. Wonderful. Okay, let's see. Do you want to? Shall we start with agenda items, or should we look real quick at bugs and triage? So there were a couple to triage. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, dealer's choice. I usually go with triage second, but I'm
All right,
good with
well, let's start with our agenda items that we can jump to triage. I guess first agenda item, I'm just going to spontaneously add because, hello, red plaid shirt. You are not always here, but I think you may have joined while I was out. Did you get a chance to say hi, or did you have anything else you wanted to tell us about?
Nope. I had conflicts for the past 2 meetings.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to make it. But I also shared, like, I think last month, that due to other priorities at Google and whatnot, I plan to step down from the lead, from the being a PL for the SIG. Like when and how, I guess it's up to y'all and how you guys want to do the transition. But yeah. Hello.
Right. Thank you for sharing that, Andrew. And I hope that your new duties at Google are very exciting and give you much to focus on. That'll be great for you. All right, so noted. We'll take action on that. Next up, I think we have an agenda item from El Nico.
Yeah, and it's cool that Andrew's here because I think this is something that might be slightly relevant. So this issue had come up a couple weeks ago, right before KubeCon, and I guess like I can share my screen just to show it. Let's see here. Let me grab the right window. So basically, this is part of the cleanup effort, or related, I guess. And David Eads had gone in and was doing a little bit of cleanup around the feature gate mechanics in I think some of the cloud provider stuff. And so he had wanted, because this was happening in the Cloud Controller Manager command package, I think he had wanted to get our opinion about this. And I think the main parts of this are like, the main part is adding this, changing the function so that it can take feature gates now. So this is kind of like, I think, where a lot of the action is happening. And I went and looked through several of the cloud providers just to see if they were using this function. And I did not see anyone who was making use of it that I thought would be a problem. So I was looking at this with feature gates as well. It looked okay to me, so I didn't want to, I think David's still working on this. But Andrew, I was kind of curious to get your thoughts on it because you might have a little more direct experience with how folks are using this. But from my scan, I couldn't find anyone who I thought this would be a problem if we change this. So
yeah, I don't think that's a relatively new constructor, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's using it, or I haven't seen personally. When it comes to the main.go file, like providers can do whatever they want. So
right.
And we are allowed to like break it here because it's kind of, this is more of a reference implementation. like what we don't want to break is like interfaces. I mean, we can break it, but like we should have good reason to break it.
Right.
But when it comes to like the sample code to compile for the main.go and like compiling things, I think whatever is in master should reflect what the dependencies recommend, so that anyone writing a new provider uses the best and latest libraries.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And like, yeah, I went through GCP, AWS, Azure, IBM, Nutanix, and vSphere, and it was like none of them are using this functionality yet. So
Yeah.
I think to what you're saying, yeah, like everyone just kind of does their own custom thing, and like, yeah, like if they need to use this, it's great that it's there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if David comes back to this, like, I'll feel happy to put an LGTM on it, but we'll just see what happens.
Okay, great. And yeah, I did look at that, and it's obviously still a work in progress, but I noticed it had some failing tests. So we will get back to that and take a look.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on it.
Okay.
If it comes back up,
right.
we'll keep the review going.
Yeah, great, great. Okay. And next up, I wanted to thank both Almiko and Chris for all their work on the talk that for SIG Cloud Provider that Chris and I delivered. The slides, Chris already uploaded the slides. Thank you, Chris. And the video is also already up. So those are in the notes if you would like to take a look at those. We do not need to watch ourselves on video in this call. But yeah, it was pretty great. And I think Chris got some good feedback afterwards as well. Chris, if you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Are you referring to people not knowing Jerome's question?
Yeah,
yeah.
There was some interesting questions that came up.
Yeah, Jerome Patazzo came up and asked like two questions. The first was, how did the cloud provider used to get invoked? And I think that was just a matter of flags to the kubelet. But then the other one was, how are we supposed to handle machines being deleted from a cluster? What is the cloud provider's responsibility? What is everyone's responsibility, really, in that scenario? Who's supposed to do what to clear out a machine after you do kubectl delete on a node? And should the cloud provider be going up and making calls to delete it? Where is the standard of what we're supposed to do? And I think that's a great question, and I don't know that there's a for certain answer for every cloud.
Yeah, that is a great question. And Chris, I know like you spend a lot of time in cluster API community as well. So like this gets complicated depending on what you're asking. And we actually, there is an issue that someone opened quite a while ago. I want to say last year or maybe before, where they were asking for functionality in Kubernetes. They said, look, when I delete a node object, I want the infrastructure behind it to be removed as well. And they had opened that as like a cloud provider related issue.
And I bet some people didn't want that. Right.
Well, right. Yes. Yeah. Right. The implications of that are so wide ranging that like, we had a little discussion on the issue, but I don't think it went anywhere. But, it does speak to that notion. And I think projects like Cluster API help to bring some standardization here. But, it's like the Wild West for the most part, right?
Yeah. So he wanted to be like doing demonstrations of in his intermediate classes of like, so here's what happens when you delete a node, and here's how it's different, and why you can't expect certain things to happen. And yeah, but yeah, it really raises a good question, like what sort of reconciling should we be doing, and should we be guiding people to do? And I don't think there's a guide.
Yeah. And, like it brings up like, this is kind of something that I see like day to day, right? Like in fact, I'm dealing with something right now where it's like, we have a user and it's like, oh, like I'm deleting the machines from the cloud console. Like, why is my cluster acting weird? And it's like, okay, well, because you deleted a machine from the cloud console. Like it's gone now.
Yeah.
So yeah, the expectations, I think users, they expect it to work like they think, right? It's like, well, if I click delete in the in my OpenStack console, then doesn't that mean that like my cluster should automatically know about it and the nodes go away and all the workloads get removed, moved everywhere? Like, because the expectation has become so great that it's like, oh yeah, all this stuff just auto magically works,
Yeah, he was noticing with some one time they deleted the nodes rebooted, and they came back into the cluster. So it's like, that seems like a security issue.
Yeah, like if you thought they were gone, why do they still have valid certs?
Mm-hmm. All I got to do is steal your dead node certs and I can rejoin the cluster? Sweet.
Well, big thank you, Bridget and Chris, for delivering the talk. Like, I think it was awesome. It was an awesome handoff, and like I'm excited to see the videos up already, because like I do want to go watch it, and I'll check it out. What, like, how well was it attended? Was it a pretty good audience? Like,
for a last day Friday, it was good. Yeah.
Yeah, for last day Friday, it was good. The room wasn't empty, but it was definitely not packed to the gills the way
50 or less,
some of the Wednesday, Thursday talks were.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Friday's a tough slot. Like,
but and this is not a high profile topic. We were in way too big a room anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
like to do that.
Yeah, but it was good though. I think that the work that everyone put in to try to clarify what is changing, what do you have to worry about, kind of getting that message. I know we spent a bunch of time, and it seemed like a lot of time, maybe just kind of getting that message crisp and getting the visual crisp. I saw people taking pictures of it, and there were a couple of people who came up and specifically wanted to find out afterwards, basically the answer to, how much should I be worried right now? What do I have to do right now? And it's like that, to me, that's a win right there. Because like that, getting those messages correctly out to the community is how we're going to hopefully have this not be a terrible disaster. So, and I think
also it sounds like AWS is doing weird things and everyone's confused over there about what's going on.
Yeah, we gotta get our friends at AWS to come answer some of these questions.
Exactly. It'd be good for them to say like, hey, here's our direction.
Because I believe his name is Grant from Red Hat, was coming and asking us, so what's up with AWS and the changes they're making and what they're deprecating and not deprecating? And I was like, I can't answer that, but you can come to this call or come into the Slack and hopefully talk to the AWS maintainers. And the whole nature of going out of tree means certainly providers can go a different direction. So I don't even want to speculate. That was not a very satisfying answer, but that's what I could give. It's like, you definitely have to talk to our friends from that cloud. And that might end up being the answer in a bunch of these cases.
I mean, it sounds like you had good discussions and whatnot afterwards. So that's really cool. I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah. Yep. So that was good. All right. And I added one more topic to the agenda just because I was noticing a discussion, Miko, that you were having over on the Slack channel. And I'm a little confused. I'm wondering what your approach is when you're looking at people looking for a home for an etcd operator, and you're saying, well, that seems kind of out of scope. And I'm like, yeah, it seems completely orthogonal to this thing, but maybe there's something I'm missing. So can you maybe give us the TLDR on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything missing there. I think that SIG Cloud Provider came up very early in their discussions because they thought like, oh, this thing's going to exist on, it might have, exist in many different cloud providers and have some sort of integration layer. But like, no, like that didn't seem right to me at all. Like cluster lifecycles seem much more appropriate, but yeah, like why weren't they going to SIG etcd? Because that seems like the natural choice. So I think it took them a while, but they've gotten to that point now, and so they're gonna raise this in the SIG etcd, kind of forum and see how that goes. So like, and if not, I guess cluster lifecycle might be a second option. But I think they were just trying to figure out where it could go, and Cloud Provider just seemed interesting early on, but I don't think it was considered long, because I think Lubomir, who's the chair for SIG cluster lifecycle, I think he commented as well that it just didn't, it didn't really have a lot of crossover.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's fine then. All right, did anyone have anything else they wanted to discuss before we take a quick look at these issues that need triage? Okay, I'm going to share just the tab in question. All right, so I just popped open the needs triage label. And of course, that gives us a few things that just have had their triage expire, which is fine. But there are some newish ones in here. 3 of them are failing tests. And then we do have a GKE scheduling pods that prevent scale down. I don't know if Andrew, if you have any thoughts about this one. I'm a little confused about what's going on here since somebody wants to archive it. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is like, I mean, yes, GKA related, but I think it's probably a node problem.
Oh, okay.
I mean, obviously, like the cloud provider is Google. But
yeah.
I think it might be good to get Sergey maybe looped in because he's an engineer working on GKA on the node side of things. Do you know his or I can ping him in that issue.
Okay. Yeah, I figure, I mean, it's certainly possible that there's something cloud provider-ish here, but yeah, I think you're right that this individual reporting this is just looking to filter on which provider is this happening with, and then it doesn't mean it's a cloud provider person. I do think the Kubernetes version is amazing. That's fantastic. How long has this been happening? 2018 until today. Okay.
I'm trying to find the right label to find this issue.
Oh, here, I'll just drop the link in the chat. I just dropped it into the meeting chat.
Thanks.
Yeah,
okay,
so yeah. And then I noticed that we also have test grid reviews in the area of things to consider. Amico, do we have something specific we're looking for? Is this related to the entry out of tree migration stuff or just testing in general?
Yeah, this is going to be, I think this is.
Go ahead and share if you want to show us what we're looking at, but I was like, I don't know why we have this in here.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a good share. Oh yeah. Yeah, let me do that here. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Is it still loading? Okay, so I think this is something that is going to become a big deal for us over the next year, right? Like, I started to put together a plan last year to improve our testing, and I still think we can get there. And I'm working internally to try and get some resources allocated so that we can push on this. But like, right now, this is the test grid, I guess, like probably not very interesting right now because it looks all green. So that's probably good. But, but something we have to be something that
it
we're
looks
going to have.
It looks all green except for all the ones we're skipping, which I'm not sure why we're skipping.
Yeah, I don't, these are SIG API machinery tests, but like the notion here is that, and I think this is something that's happening across Kubernetes, is that we should get better at reviewing this to make sure that if flakes are coming up, we're addressing them. Now, the tough part is that right now, the unit tests that we have that are in the KK repo, like I think all of them run on GCE. Some of them run on AWS and some of them run on Azure. And there are skip clauses in there to detect the platform and do different things depending on those. So like right now, in order for someone to go in there and to be able to fix this stuff, like they need to have some knowledge about those specific cloud providers if there's an issue happening on one of those. And then they might need to propose, changes to those cloud provider repos to fix them and whatnot. And so I think that, it makes it a little bit difficult for us as a SIG to address that, because like we would need to spend some time. Like if I were going to do this, I would need to spend a little bit of time, probably, bugging Andrew with questions about GCP and whatnot, and like, getting better at being able to maintain that piece in the upstream. But that's part of what we should be doing as a SIG, is making sure that the cloud providers that are owned by Kubernetes SIGs, we should be making sure that those are maintained, and that the tests we have, we're not flaking out on them, right? That we're keeping up with fixing them. And this is one of the things that Antonio was bringing up. Now, where I would like to take this in the future is that I think we can develop a set of common tests that then the cloud providers could implement in their own repo, like an implementation of those tests, and use the common test to exercise. And then we could start to invert this so that we could have the tests, the test implementations living closer to each cloud provider, so that if their cloud provider starts to fail, they'll have, kind of a notion of what's happening right there. In the short term, though, I think the idea was that we would look at this test grid at our SIG meetings, see if there are tests that are red that we need to investigate, and then go investigate them, because this is what led us to some of the issues that have come up over the last couple releases. And specifically, as we're extracting, the in-tree components, it's putting more pressure on the other parts to like be correct and everything. So I think like that's the notion here. I think I'm not the best with these test grid tools and whatnot. I could certainly use to improve, but I think probably we want to get better at looking at the tests that we know are SIG Cloud Provider tests. Like that one, it looked like there was a whole bunch of API machinery and stuff. So maybe, look at that link again, see if we can refine it just to the SIG Cloud Provider tests, so that we could see if any of those are failing, right? And then if we see failures happening, I think right now we need to coordinate with the individual provider owners, which will be like GCP, AWS, and Azure, to get any problems we see come up investigated. So yeah, that's kind of my stump speech on this one, I guess.
Okay, that's good. That's some good, helpful context.
What I would love to see in the future actually is like we get to a point where like, yeah, there's some dashboard where like all these different cloud providers are being tested on whatever that provider's infrastructure that's been provided to do it, those kind of things. But, that's a long tail of working with the CNCF and making sure that all the like, credits programs are in place and everything. And, but that's where I would love to see us get to,
Okay. And that, to your point about credits programs and working with CNCF, I think that could be moving and changing some of these tests could be an entree to this SIG for people. I'm kind of looking ahead to, it's end of March. Pretty soon we're going to be getting summer of code types who want to come in and do something. And it's like, well, they can maybe do this.
Right. And like with the testing effort, like I've got the plans far enough along that I think we're really close to the point where I could probably, like, if I could get the POC working that I was like very close on, that could be a starting point that then I could say, okay, there's a bunch of other tasks we could come up with. And yeah, anyone in the community, it would be much easier to say like, okay, yeah, summer of code folks, outreachy folks, like interns, like we could break out the tasks in a way where we could say, we want to recreate this test using this framework. Someone could go look at it, try to get it working, I think it'll make it easier to get more collaboration going. But I'm trying to get to the point where I can share what I have with others so they can just take it and run if they needed to.
Okay, I'm taking a note on that in the doc, as in that's something that is an action item. If we can get that from you by the time the summer volunteers show up, that will be a very helpful way to give them something to do. Because you did that great article with and I should I don't know if we have a link to that. It's definitely linked in Chris and I's slides, but in case people didn't get a chance to go look at the blog post that Elmico did with is it SIG Contrivex, I want to say? I think it was Kubernetes.
Yeah, it was
the Kubernetes dev blog.
Reached out. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think one of the things that you ended up highlighting was, this is the spotlight on SIG Cloud Provider. I'll put it in the doc and in the chat. And I think one of the things you ended up highlighting is that it can be challenging to onboard to the SIG. And I know that's one of the things that Chris was highlighting too, is like, it's not necessarily easy to come into this, but we can look for isolated things like this testing effort that will be a good way to do it.
Oh, and I think Chris's experience about like inheriting this kind of stuff is like, I mean, that's an on-ramp that probably a lot of people are gonna, you know, that's probably gonna ring true with many people who are working on these things, right? Because like, you know, I don't know, like working on the cloud provider, it's like unless you're working for someone who's paying for you to do it, or you're working on one of the open source platforms like, you know, like OpenStack or like CloudStack or something like that, there's probably less of an interest in like, okay, am I going to go write a, you know, mom and pop cloud provider and then maintain it just because I'm a user of mom and pop cloud? Like, you know, that's a big ask, right?
Yeah. Okay. This is everything we had on our agenda, and taking a look at the item that needed triage. Is there anything else we should talk about today? All right. Well, good seeing everyone again, and we will chat more in the future, I'm sure. All right.
Oh, thanks.
Take care.
Thanks for
Bye.
hosting, Bridget.
Yep. Bye.